In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world is still wrapped in shadows, there is a question that stirs beneath the surface of every human life. Ancient as dust, intimate as breath. What becomes of us when our bodies fall silent? Scripture speaks of a day when graves open, when what was broken rises whole, when what was dust stands in glory. It is a promise whispered across centuries, from prophets to apostles, spoken in deserts, in tombs, in upper rooms filled with trembling hope. And as the sun lifts over the edges of our ordinary days, the question burns brighter. How will God raise the dead? What will we look like when He calls us back into life? This is not the stuff of legends or myth. It is the core of Christian hope, quiet, steady, powerful enough to break the despair of funerals and shine light into the aching corners of grief. Imagine for a moment a body no longer bound to weakness, a form no longer chained to sickness or time, a resurrection shaped not by human imagination, but by the very power that raised Jesus from His tomb. And so we stand at the edge of one of Scripture's deepest mysteries, where the dust of the earth meets the breath of God, where endings turn into beginnings, where mortality is swallowed up by life. The world of Scripture unfolds slowly here. Across its pages, death is never the final word. From the earliest chapters, where Adam returns to the soil from which he was formed, to Ezekiel's valley of dry bones trembling with coming life, the Bible speaks with a consistent pulse. God is not finished with the human body. Though it breaks, though it weakens, though it collapses under the weight of time, it remains something God intends to restore. Paul, writing to believers in Corinth, people surrounded by philosophies that despised the physical, declared something shocking for his age. The body matters. Not because of its frailty, but because God made it, shaped it, breathed life into it. And what God forms, He does not abandon. So the apostle begins weaving an image, a seed falling into the earth, a small, unimpressive thing that carries a hidden future. What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. The grain that disappears beneath the soil does not return in the same form. Yet it is still itself, transformed, awakened. Paul draws the parallel quietly, letting the image settle. Our present bodies are the seed. The resurrection body is the harvest. And perhaps, somewhere in this, we discover our own longing. That life not end in the silence of a grave. That what we lose, youth, strength, health, beloved faces, might one day be restored. That God sees every form we have carried, every wound carved into flesh, every wrinkle shaped by years, and intends not to erase us but to redeem us. But the mystery deepens. When Paul speaks of the resurrection body, he does not describe an escape from physicality. He describes a transformation within it, a body marked not by decay, but by permanence, not by weakness, but by strength, not by dishonor, but by glory. There is a tension forming here, as if Scripture is drawing us into a quiet storm. The question rises again: what will we be like? Will we recognize one another? Will we carry personality, memory, laughter? Scripture never imagines us as ghostly forms drifting in endless light. Instead, it anchors the resurrection in something concrete: the risen body of Jesus. This is the moment where the biblical story shifts like a camera turning toward a bright doorway. The tomb is empty, the stone is rolled back, and Jesus stands on the other side of death, not as a spirit, but as a man who eats, walks, speaks, breathes. Yet He is changed. He appears in locked rooms. His glory at times flashes through the ordinary. He is physical, yet not bound by the limits that once held Him. The disciples touch Him. Thomas feels the wounds. And across these encounters, Scripture whispers its message with growing clarity. As He is, so shall we be. Every resurrection promise rests on this foundation. And perhaps this is where our own hidden struggle begins, the tension between the world we know and the world promised to us. Between the fragile bodies we inhabit now and the glorious bodies Scripture describes. Between our grief at the graveside and the hope of hearing our names spoken by the one who conquered death. If you trace the thread further, the conflict sharpens. Death is not just a human fear, it is a cosmic intruder. Paul calls it the last enemy. It is the shadow that fell over Eden, the consequence of separation from the one who gives life. Yet even here, God's intention never shifted. The prophets spoke of a day when death would be swallowed forever, when tears would be wiped away, when the shroud stretched over all nations would be torn. But how? Paul steps into that question with language that trembles under the weight of glory. We will not all sleep, but we will all be changed. A moment, a breath, a transformation that happens in the twinkling of an eye. The perishable becomes imperishable. Mortality takes on immortality. The broken becomes whole, and a quiet suspense rises again. What does it mean for mortality to be swallowed up by life? This is not a soft metaphor. It is a declaration of overwhelming divine power, life overwhelming death, consuming it, nullifying it. Not by ignoring the body, but by renewing it completely. Yet a pattern interrupt emerges here. For Paul, resurrection is not merely a future event. It is a present calling. Therefore, he writes, "Stand firm. If death no longer defines the end of the story, then fear no longer defines the contents of the middle." Perhaps this is where the spiritual battle meets our daily lived experience, not in grand visions of the end times, but in the quiet courage to live as people who believe God is capable of restoring everything that has ever been lost. As we move toward the heart of this mystery, the weight of it becomes almost overwhelming. The resurrection is not about escaping the body. It is about receiving a new one crafted by God's own power, reflecting not our brokenness but His glory. Paul describes it with four contrasts: sown in corruption, raised in incorruption; sown in dishonor, raised in glory; sown in weakness, raised in power; sown a natural body, raised a spiritual body. A spiritual body does not mean immaterial. It means a body fully alive with the Spirit of God. A body no longer ruled by frailty or the slow unraveling of time. A body that mirrors the resurrected Christ, not identical, but patterned after Him. Imagine that. A body without pain, without decay, without the fear of losing itself. A body capable of reflecting the fullness of life as God intended it. Not floating, not fading, not dissolving into some vague spiritual light, but standing, walking, laughing, embracing, living. And yet, another tension beat. A question lingers. Will we recognize each other? Scripture gives its quiet answer through the risen Christ. His followers knew Him, not instantly, but truly. Their eyes needed to adjust to glory, and perhaps ours will too. Now we come to the moment Scripture lifts the veil. The resurrection is not merely an event. It is the final unveiling of God's intention for humanity. Christ is called the firstfruits, the beginning of a harvest not yet fully revealed. His resurrection is the blueprint, the prototype, the assurance that what God began in Him, He will complete in us. On that final day, when the trumpet sounds and the dead are called forth, the earth itself becomes a doorway through which life returns. Bodies long dissolved, forgotten, hidden beneath centuries, none are beyond His reach. The God who formed Adam from dust does not lose track of a single particle of His creation. And the power that raised Jesus from the tomb does not weaken with time. There is a divine intimacy here, a tenderness often lost in the dramatic imagery. God does not simply summon humanity as a crowd. He calls each person by name. Jesus hints at this when He says, "All who are in their graves will hear His voice," the same voice that called Lazarus forth, the same voice that spoke creation into being. And when He calls, life responds. The resurrection body emerges not as a reconstruction of the old, but as its glorified continuation. Just as a seed becomes a tree, just as dim starlight becomes sunrise, the form God gives will be more real, more solid, more alive than anything we have ever known. And then comes Paul's triumphant cry, words that shake across history. Death is swallowed up in victory, not simply defeated, consumed. overpowered by a life that cannot be touched again. This is the turning point of all creation, the moment when every funeral becomes a temporary pause, when every grief is reinterpreted, when every lost body sleeps in hope. And so we return to the question that began everything. How will God raise the dead? What will the resurrection body look like? Scripture's answer is both simple and breathtaking. He will raise us by the same power that raised Christ, and we will rise as ourselves, recognizable, restored, transformed. Bodies free of decay, radiant with life, shaped by the Spirit, crafted for eternity. No more weakness, no more aging, no more pain, no more separation. The resurrection is God's declaration that nothing He made will be abandoned. Not the soul, not the body, not the person we truly are. And perhaps this is the quiet hope we carry into our days. The hope that every aching joint, every scar, every failing breath, every tear shed beside a grave is not the end of the story. The God who began life from dust will bring life again, not as a return to what was, but as the unveiling of what we were always meant to be. In the deep silence after loss, when the world feels thinner and the heart feels fragile, the promise of resurrection stands like a steady flame. Not loud, not hurried, just certain. God will raise the dead. He will call each name, and what rises will be more alive than anything this world has ever seen. This hope does not erase grief, but it transforms it. It does not deny the finality of death, but it declares a greater finality, life that cannot be taken back, life rooted not in human strength but in divine power. And one day, when the last trumpet sounds and the world wakes to the voice that made it, we will stand renewed, whole, restored, recognizable, glorious. Until then, we wait with hope, and the hope is enough to steady the soul.